So then we are back with the more understandings from the time of the second tabernacle services, where you find the Aramaic English translation of the word. This translation comes from the original manuscripts of the prophets of the Tzayelic lineage. So then we can understand the time of the end. As per Yeshayahu the prophet, we find layers of understanding of the spring feast, the autumn feast, and also the returning of the holy cities of the Hamashiach laid waste for many centuries. As we read it in Yeshayahu the prophet, it's always important having a glance at what the Mashiach said regarding the time of the end and also the time of the autumn feast, because China has done it again, and now not only they are becoming the industrial power of the world, but they want to become even more, since they are obviously upgrading their laws from 89. Not only this, but they are going to include services, standards, and social management. These are layered extremely important, because obviously the economy and the social terms are obviously going to get involved because of the autumn feast and the preparations for the time of the end. Now then, Daniel explained very clearly as far as the dynamics of the time of the end and what should be involved. So then, the autumn feast itself, regarding the manuscripts, the original manuscripts of Galah or Revelation, explains then the serious condition of what's coming in a very near future. Now, it was said before many times that the Chinese system is coming, and sure enough, the timing, it is so precise regarding those 32 months since a couple and a half years ago. Now then, China is obviously working on the service and social management systems. Now then, Daniel the prophet has very precisely pointed these specific alien divinity related then with trade, and this trade has a tone of religion because it explains a foreign power. Now then, there are many kinds of situations, such as Pearl Harbor in 41. That there were many kinds of signs that were given, and unfortunately the people were having those humdrum kind of a day, monotony and complacency and so on and so forth. So now China is then not only becoming the power of industry, but also they are gravitating towards the social services. Now, this relates with the culture. So this truly is a very important topic, because as Daniel is explaining these sectors, later on, then the freighters of the earth are going to have their chance, because freighting, or the freighters of the earth, are going to be responsible for payment of taxes. Now then, our Grand President on Wednesday are going to talk and give a new plan of taxation, and these should show some sort of organization regarding what's going on in our country. Now, however, the situation as it is, then the search becomes very important regarding the continent of Africa. Now, as China is expanding its trade worldwide, now the culture is going along with it. As in any situation, in any country, trade and religion were always working together. Without a strong economy, religion simply doesn't exist. Now then, the system of the world, as per the instructions of Daniel, is giving us a few understandings, a few dynamics that these nations are involving themselves with. Now, China has its place secured because the scripture says so. It's already given place for their religion, place for their military, and a place for their trade. Now, the West, however, is in a very big trouble, because in the 21st verse of the 11th chapter it explains the system that was weakened, and then later on gathering some strength, but because of the relationship with the African continent related with the rare materials. Now then, as wars and rumors of wars are brewing then in the East regarding North Korea and the threats that they are posing, other nations are being involved, such as Australia, also Japan. And it's kind of interesting the detour that these nations are absolutely blindly involved with. So they haven't yet thought of, if they come up with a very nice detour, then the other countries who are much more involved in the economy can easily understand the importance of organizing Africa. Now then, as in any kind of warfare situation, if there are interests around the world in an area that is absolutely disorganized, such as a few places of Africa, not because they don't have the ability, but because of the spiritual powers involved, now we find that these countries absolutely taken on by the East and North Korea, and then Africa is left wide open for other types of economical trades, economic dynamics. And there is then China, obviously publicized today, and they're going to get involved in the social management and also introducing standards and upgrades ever since '89. Now then, there is obviously a point regarding this, because North Korea, as the neighbor of China, they won't ever be crazy enough of doing anything other than the usual. Now, it is amazing how the West, they get so distracted with somewhat not relevant situations because of the proximity of China. Yet, people are concentrated their focuses, and there they are. Everybody's concerned with a power problem in the military level. In Africa, he's left behind. And then China comes up with these plans, so it's kind of interesting that the government has taken on this detour so widely, and they don't realize how important is organizing the continent of Africa, mostly Rwanda, Congo, and those regions that are so rich in these new technological era, and they can consider themselves as the Arabian oil of electronics. But there it is. That's the situation that's going on. So then Daniel explained very precisely regarding the nation of China in its trade, military, and then culture. And bit by bit, this particular layer of the 39th verse is becoming even grander. And the West obviously weakened because they simply do not have the plans of the Scripture. They have a tendency of listening these holy instructions as religious aspect rather than logic, and they don't understand that the Scripture on a Gentile level is extremely logical, and U.S. and its partners simply got deterred. Now, nobody's saying it's not important, but the proximity of the place, speaking of North Korea, they won't ever, under any condition, release an atomic bomb. Firstly, because the Scripture does not give any indication until the time of the end. And we are not during the time of the end, because the trade of the time of the end is not yet completely set. Yet they spending a lot of money, time, and there they are, trying to fight with them, and they are simply got themselves involved in a detour. So then Africa, for the moment, mostly as far as the military, they adopt many kinds of Soviet methods and equipment. Now then, the kingdom of the north, as then Daniel is pointing very simply, what causes then the kingdom of the north certainly shall come in a later time with a great army and much equipment. So precisely the situation is, before joining up with the forces of the east, we find then that Africa and its resources must be organized. There is absolutely no choice regarding Africa. They must organize themselves before the time of the autumn feast. Now then, the prophet Yeshaya has explained many layers related with this, and because of the importance of the Scripture from the Dead Sea. Now, a copy of the original document of Yeshaya makes a very interesting reading, because it shows layer after layer after layer of these particular verses so important, related with the time of the end and the time that we should spend reading these instructions. So then, the kingdom of the north, obviously they understand potentials. They are already involved in Africa for so long, and they kind of have an idea of what's coming and what are the potentials of the area. Now then, Yeshaya chapter 1:8 explains then the place beyond the rivers of Ethiopia, and explains regarding tabernacling and many other layers related with this. So in order for this place beyond the rivers of Ethiopia becoming then the central focus, it must receive certain sort of strengthening from the military of the northern kingdom. Now then, any kind of forward motion of any nation of the first world country in any level you find a certain level of trade and a certain level of military exchange as far as ideas, training, equipment. And Africa is not very far behind. Now, there is a promise from the scripture regarding this place beyond the rivers of Ethiopia. Now then, analyzing the situation, why then US is so deterred, and why then the Soviets are so focused, is obviously regarding the focus of Syria, Libya, those areas, regarding North Korea. Now I got the military over there on the other side of the world. And then obviously Africa was left behind in an area where then trade and military, in religion and culture, they are ready to get themselves involved with systems, and these systems, unfortunately, thus far, are not related with the United States. Now, the next time, I'm going to evaluate more of these from the enlightenment of Galah, or Revelation. So please stay tuned, much more coming up.